If you visit Venice today, you'll see four magnificent bronze horses standing proudly on the balcony of St. Mark's Basilica. But these monuments are actually stolen loot from one of the greatest betrayals in medieval history. In the early 13th century, the armies of the Fourth Crusade took a holy vow to march on Jerusalem. Instead, they diverted their massive fleet and annihilated Constantinople, the undisputed capital of the Christian world. The destruction was absolute. The Crusaders burned entire neighborhoods to the ground, slaughtered their Byzantine allies, and stripped the city's churches of their sacred relics. This created an immediate public relations crisis for the Crusades' commanders. They had to somehow explain to the Pope and the rest of Europe why they had just destroyed a Christian superpower instead of fighting in the Holy Land. Enter Geoffrey of Villehardouin. A knight and a leader of the Crusade, Geoffrey sat down years later to write De la Conquête de Constantinople, a manuscript that essentially served as the expedition's official damage control document. To pull this off, he relies on a highly manipulative narrative strategy. He writes entirely in the third person and frames the expedition as an epic, chivalrous quest, giving his highly subjective account the illusion of objective history. He waves away the attacks on Christian cities like Zara and Constantinople as a series of tragic but divinely ordained accidents, claiming the army was merely executing God's will. But if we cross-examine Geoffrey's heroic spin against the physical evidence his army left behind, we expose a very different set of motives. Geoffrey's manuscript describes the siege of Constantinople as a spontaneous burst of religious enthusiasm. The actual military operation tells a story of cold, calculated engineering. Enrico Dandolo, the Doge of Venice, designed a ruthless naval assault. He outfitted Venetian war galleys with massive wooden siege towers and flying bridges suspended directly from the ship masts. This tactical map shows the exact vector of the Venetian fleet's attack. Rather than fighting a grinding war of attrition at the massive land walls, the Venetians deliberately bypassed them to strike the Golden Horn. The Golden Horn was an inlet and major urban waterway that served as the city's primary and significantly less fortified harbor. By forcing a naval assault along this massive coastline, the attackers stretched the city's defenses past their breaking point. The Byzantines had to spread elite mercenaries, like the Varangian Guard, dangerously thin to cover newly threatened seaward towers. Executing a custom amphibious assault of this scale requires immense capital and precise planning. The mechanical reality of the siege proves this was a tactical strike, not a divine accident. The motives of the Crusaders become even clearer when we look past their military tactics and examine exactly what they chose to steal. While many foot soldiers grabbed bones and religious relics, the Venetian leadership stole monuments of imperial Roman power. They took a quadriga, a classical chariot drawn by four horses, and mounted it right above the central arch of St. Mark's Basilica to project their own state dominance. Then there is the political paper trail. Immediately after breaching the walls, the invaders carved up Byzantine territories to create the Latin Empire, a new Crusader state built on Western feudal principles. This diagram breaks down the typographic seal of the newly installed emperor, Baldwin I. Notice how he adopts the title Imperator Constantinopolitanus. By claiming authority over the city of Constantinople rather than the Roman people, Baldwin was laying the legal groundwork to legitimize a hostile takeover. Both the theft of the bronze quadriga and the minting of these new titles reveal the Crusades' true objective. They were actively usurping Roman geopolitical authority, using their holy vow as a convenient cover story. Geoffrey of Villehardouin wraps up his manuscript by focusing on the triumphant success of his mission. Inside the city walls, the reality was a brutal cultural erasure. Priceless classical art that had survived since antiquity was destroyed for raw scrap. The Crusaders melted down the Athena Promachos, a colossal bronze statue sculpted by Phidias, simply to mint basic coin. The religious backlash to this destruction was furious. Pope Innocent III was horrified by the looting of churches and the slaughter of civilians, and he responded by excommunicating the entire crusading army. The sack of 1204 dealt an irreparable blow to Eastern Christendom, erasing centuries of carefully preserved classical heritage in a matter of days. Beyond the stolen art and the excommunications, the heist had a fatal, long-term geopolitical consequence. It permanently crippled the Byzantine Empire. This time-lapse map tracks the Byzantine borders following the siege. The empire shatters into smaller, vulnerable rump states, fracturing the primary defensive bulwark of Eastern Europe and directly paving the way for the eventual Ottoman conquest in 1453. The trauma of that collapse still resonates 8 centuries later. You can find intense grief over the events of 1204 in modern internet discourse, and even recent popes have formally apologized to the Greek Orthodox Church for the massacre. The victors write the first draft of history, wrapping their actions in epic spin and propaganda. But through stolen trophies, political paper trails, and permanent cultural scars, the truth eventually survives the text.
YouTube thinks you'd love the video on the screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe.